Rain slams against the mountains outside Boulder as a former Navy SEAL named Logan Hale spots the impossible, a handicapped minivan spinning out of control on a deserted highway. Inside, a young paraplegic woman clings to her wheelchair, flames rising beneath her as thunder cracks like a memory he's spent years trying to bury. Beside him, Rex, his battle-trained German shepherd, launches forward before Logan can speak. In the next 60 seconds, metal will scream, fire will bloom, and a stranger's life will hang between tragedy and a miracle no one saw coming. But saving her is only the beginning, because what Rex senses in that storm will unravel a secret designed to destroy Logan's future forever. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. And if you believe courage still exists in the quiet moments of our lives, hit subscribe and share this story with someone who needs hope today. Rainhaven never looked friendly in winter, but tonight the town felt hostile in a way only the Pacific Northwest could manage. Cold wind pushed sheets of rain sideways across Highway 47, turning the road into a wet ribbon that reflected every flash of lightning like broken glass. The fir trees along the shoulder bent under the gale, their dark silhouettes trembling against a sky packed with low, heavy clouds. This was the kind of storm that sent fishermen home early and made even seasoned truckers pull over, a night meant for staying inside, unless you were someone who had lived through worse. Logan Hale kept both hands steady on the wheel of his charcoal gray pickup as he drove toward the forested outskirts of Rainhaven. 36, tall and lean, with the angular build of someone who maintained discipline long after leaving the military, Logan carried himself with the composure of a man used to uncertainty. His black hair, cut short, was damp from the leak near the roof that he kept meaning to fix. A faint scar crossed the edge of his right temple, the only outward reminder of a rooftop blast he'd survived during his Navy SEAL years. His face rarely showed what he felt, but the quiet tension in his jaw made it clear he was alert even on an empty road. Beside him sat Rex, a 5-year-old German shepherd trained as a SEAL canine. Rex had a powerful, balanced build, a sable coat darkening along the spine, and alert amber eyes that reflected every passing glimmer of lightning. Even in the truck's cramped cab, he sat upright with a soldier's focus. His ears twitched at distant thunder, but his breathing stayed slow and controlled. The streak of pale fur on his hind leg, left from an explosion overseas, stood out against the rest of his coat, like a small badge of survival. The wipers fought the rain, smearing more water than they cleared. Logan reduced his speed as another gust shoved the truck sideways. "Easy night, huh?" he muttered, glancing at Rex. The dog didn't react, but a shift in his posture told Logan he wasn't entirely comfortable with the storm. Thunder rolled across the hills, deep enough to vibrate through the steering wheel. Lightning flashed, bathing the road in stark white for a single heartbeat. That moment was long enough for Rex to stiffen. His muscles tensed, ears snapped forward, and a low warning growl formed in his chest. It wasn't aggression, it was instinct. Logan felt a familiar jolt of adrenaline. Rex didn't growl without reason. Ahead, the road curved toward a narrow bridge that crossed a small ravine. As the next flash of lightning tore through the sky, Logan saw it. A mobility-converted silver minivan fishtailing across both lanes. Its rear tires skimmed over a pool of standing water, and the vehicle jerked violently to the left. The brake lights pulsed erratically as the van spun half a turn, slid sideways, and slammed nose first into the steel guardrail. The impact echoed through the storm like a snapped tree trunk. Steam burst from beneath the crumpled hood. Smoke followed, thin at first, then darker. "Hold on," Logan said, although Rex was already pawing at the door. He braked hard, the truck shuddering as it came to a stop several car lengths behind the wreck. Logan threw the door open and ran into the rain. The cold hit him with a knife's edge, turning his breath into mist as he sprinted toward the van. Water splashed around his boots and soaked through his jacket within seconds. Rex followed close behind, low and fast, scanning the road with the caution of a trained operator. The van's hazard lights blinked wildly, casting jittery red light across the wet asphalt. The front end had folded around the guardrail, metal creased inward like crushed foil. Logan could see movement inside. Someone was trapped. He reached the driver's side and peered through the fractured window. A woman in her late 50s sat strapped into the modified driver's seat, her arms trembling as she tried to work the seatbelt. Her hair, a clean silver bob, was plastered against her cheeks. Her skin was pale under the flickering dashboard glow, and her mouth moved as if she couldn't gather enough air. Her legs didn't move. In the space where the pedals should have been, a single metal control bar extended upward, the hand drive mechanism used by wheelchair drivers. A folded wheelchair was secured behind her seat with a strap that had partially come loose from the collision. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Logan shouted over the wind. Her eyes snapped to him. They were sharp, intelligent eyes, hazel with a ring of green, but now wide with fear. When thunder cracked overhead, she flinched so violently that her shoulders slammed into the seat. "Please, please help me," she gasped. Her voice was thin and strained, but steady enough to show she was fighting to stay conscious. The driver's door was bent inward, the frame warped just enough that the latch wouldn't budge. Logan grabbed the top edge and pulled, bracing his boots against the asphalt. Rainwater ran off his sleeves in streams. The metal groaned but held. He pulled again, harder. Rex barked once, short and urgent. Flames were starting to form beneath the hood, licking forward with each breath of wind. Logan set his shoulder against the door and pushed with everything he had. The dented frame shifted with a sudden metallic snap. He forced the gap wide enough to reach inside, then slammed his palm onto the seatbelt buckle. It released with a sharp click. The strap recoiled. "I'm going to lift you out," he said. "Put your arms around my neck." The woman hesitated, overwhelmed, then obeyed. Her fingers dug into his collar. Her legs remained rigid and unmoving, but she held on with surprising strength. Lightning flashed. For an instant, the interior of the minivan glowed bright white. Logan saw her face clearly. Strong cheekbones, thin brows pulled tight, and the exhaustion of someone who had battled storms long before tonight. He lifted her carefully, sliding one arm beneath her knees and the other under her back. She was lighter than she looked, but the motion was awkward inside the cramped cabin. Rex backed up, giving him room. The fire beneath the hood flared once, sending a fan of sparks downward. Logan stepped away quickly, tightening his grip. The moment they cleared the wreck, a sharp burst sounded behind them as something in the engine failed. A sudden rush of heat followed. The woman buried her face into Logan's shoulder, shivering uncontrollably. "You're safe now," he said, voice low and firm. He carried her back to the pickup. Rex climbed into the back seat, positioning himself where he could see both Logan and the woman. Logan settled her onto the passenger seat and adjusted her posture so she wouldn't strain her back. The storm outside thrashed against the metal roof. Inside, the cab was dim and warm with breath and adrenaline. The woman blinked hard, trying to focus. "My name is Eleanor Ryder. I'm Logan Hale," he said. "This is Rex." Rex leaned forward, placing one paw gently on the center console. His amber eyes fixed on Eleanor with unusual intensity, steady and unblinking. Eleanor stared back, breath catching. Those eyes. I've seen eyes like that before. My last service dog. He always knew when a storm was coming. Logan glanced at Rex, then at her. Something unspoken passed between the three of them, a quiet moment carved out of chaos. The kind of moment that hinted the night had changed more than just the shape of twisted metal on a highway. Outside, thunder rolled again, but softer, as if the worst of the storm had finally begun to pass. The drive back toward Logan's cabin wound through the northwest forest, a stretch of tall pines and moss-covered trunks that lined the narrow road like silent sentinels. The storm had eased, but the aftermath lingered in patches of fog that drifted low across the headlights. The tires whispered over the wet pavement, and each bend of the road sent faint beams of light sweeping over the ferns and underbrush glistening with rain. Inside the truck, the air was warmer, but tension clung to the small space like residue from the crash. Eleanor Ryder sat propped against the passenger seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her fingers were long, elegant despite the tremor running through them. Her skin held a tired pallor, the kind that came from years of battling something no one could see. Even now, after being pulled from a burning van, she tried to keep her composure, chin lifted slightly, shoulders held straight, breathing measured, but every distant rumble of thunder tightened the muscles along her neck. Her wheelchair, scratched on one side from the accident, rested in the back of the truck bed, secured beneath a tarp. Logan made a mental note to check its condition later. Rex remained alert behind her seat, sitting tall enough for his head to brush the edge of the headrest. His breath fogged faintly onto the glass as he watched Eleanor through the gap. His ears twitched at every inhale she fought to steady. "You cold?" Logan asked, keeping his eyes on the road. She shook her head. "Just catching up with myself." Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone still halfway inside the memory of impact. Logan recognized the sound, the way survivors spoke in the first hour after disaster, as if they were afraid reality might collapse if they acknowledged too much at once. You handled it well, he said simply. A humorless breath slipped from her. I didn't feel like I did. Lightning flashed far in the distance, bright enough to silhouette the clouds, but too far to hear. Even so, Eleanor shifted abruptly, shoulders tightening, knuckles whitening. Rex responded immediately, leaning forward until his head rested beside her arm. The moment his fur touched her sleeve, her breathing eased by a fraction. He's attentive, Eleanor murmured, glancing at the dog. He's trained to respond to distress, Logan said, but sometimes he picks things up before I do. Eleanor nodded slowly. I can tell. They rode in silence for another mile until the forest thickened and the road narrowed into a private gravel path. Logan turned off, the truck crunching over the wet stones. The cabin appeared through the trees, a sturdy single-story building of aged cedar and stone, smoke curling from the chimney into the damp night air. Light glowed warmly through the front window, casting soft gold on the porch, where an old rocking chair swayed lightly from the wind. Logan parked and stepped out first, the cold pulling at his clothes. He lifted Eleanor carefully from the truck, steady and patient with every movement. She wrapped an arm around his shoulders without hesitation this time, trust settling in where fear had been an hour earlier. Her weight was delicate but stable, and her posture held dignity despite her vulnerability. There was a precision in the way she carried herself that hinted at who she'd been before the wheelchair, someone who once moved with confidence and independence. Inside, the cabin smelled of timber and faint smoke. The stone fireplace radiated gentle warmth across the room, illuminating the walls lined with shelves of old survival manuals, dog training logs, and a few framed photos from Logan's SEAL years. A small dining table sat under a hanging lamp, notebooks stacked neatly at one end. The space was modest but orderly, the kind of home built for someone who didn't waste energy on the unnecessary. Logan set Eleanor carefully onto the cushioned armchair closest to the fire. The orange glow licked across her pale skin, easing the shaken look in her eyes. You'll be warmer here, Logan said. I'll get a blanket. While he stepped into the adjacent room, Rex approached her. He sat at her feet, tail resting still on the wooden floor. His posture wasn't protective, more like he was keeping vigil. Eleanor studied him, her expression softening in a way Logan hadn't seen since the crash. When Logan returned with a thick wool blanket, she ran a calming hand over Rex's head. He's remarkable, she said quietly. He saved my life more than once, Logan replied. Hard to picture him not being at my side. What happened to his leg? She asked, noticing the pale streak of scar on Rex's hind limb. Shrapnel, Logan said, keeping his answer simple. We were lucky that day. Eleanor nodded as though she understood luck better than most. The fire cracked gently, sending warm light flickering across her face. Logan grabbed a mug, poured hot water over dried ginger, and set it on the small table beside her. Drink slowly, he said. Shock can sneak up on you. Eleanor curled her hands around the mug. The steam swirled near her chin, calming the tremor in her breath. For the first time since he'd pulled her from the van, she looked directly at him, not as a rescuer, but as someone who sensed steady ground beneath her feet. Thank you, Logan, she said. Not just for the rescue, for bringing me somewhere that doesn't feel dangerous. Storm's passing, he replied, inside and out. But her expression didn't ease. Something deeper stirred beneath her composed exterior. Logan had seen it before, in soldiers long after the battle was over, in survivors whose wounds weren't visible. You're carrying more than the crash, he said, not unkindly. She stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in her eyes. Storms have a way of digging up things I try not to. Remember. Rex suddenly lifted his head, alert but not alarmed. He stood, took 2 slow steps toward Eleanor, and rested his paw gently against her knee, the movement deliberate and soft. Eleanor froze, not in fear, but in recognition. My last dog did that, she whispered. He always knew when a memory was coming before I did. Logan glanced at Rex. The dog's gaze was steady, focused entirely on Eleanor, as if he were reading something beneath the surface. Eleanor blinked slowly, her breath stuttering. It's been 20 years since the accident, since the storm that took my husband and my son. When the thunder hit tonight, I felt like I was back there. I shouldn't have tried to drive, not in weather like this. Her voice cracked, a small fracture in an otherwise strong shell. Logan didn't push further. Some stories needed space before they could be told. You're safe here, he said. Take your time. Rex settled beside her chair, curling close enough that she could reach him without leaning. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment, the corners of her mouth lifting just barely. The dog's quiet presence worked like a balm, grounding her in the warmth of the room rather than the cold memory of twisted metal. Outside, the storm softened into a steady drizzle. Inside, the cabin held stillness, the kind that only comes after chaos. Eleanor tucked the blanket tighter around herself. "I don't know why tonight had to unfold the way it did," she said softly, "but I'm glad you were there." Logan nodded once. "So am I." Rex rested his head on her footrest, eyes half closed but attentive, as if he had appointed himself guardian for the night. The fire crackled. Eleanor's breathing steadied. And for the first time since the crash, her posture eased, not in surrender, but in relief. This was the beginning of something none of them yet understood. Morning came quietly over the Rainhaven woods, the kind of pale silver dawn that slips between trees before the sun gathers the courage to rise. Moisture clung to every branch, every pane of glass, leaving the world outside looking washed and softened. Inside Logan's cabin, the air was calm, warmed by the fading embers in the stone fireplace. The storm had passed, but its echo remained in the dampness of the walls and in the heaviness of the woman sitting across from Logan. Eleanor Ryder looked different in daylight. Not less fragile, but more defined. Her complexion, though still pale from shock, carried a natural elegance. The lines at the corners of her eyes suggested a life lived with intention rather than regret. Her hair, silver and neat despite the night's chaos, framed a face that had once known confidence. Yet beneath that composure lay tension, coiled like a wire pulled too tight for too long. Logan set a mug of warm tea on the table beside her. He had changed into a clean flannel shirt and dark work pants, his posture as straight and measured as ever. Morning light revealed the hardened angles of his features, the strong jaw, the narrow nose, the faint scars near his temple and across two knuckles. His entire presence spoke of discipline, shaped by years in the seals and sharpened by whatever he had survived afterward. Rex lay between them, paws stretched forward, head upright and focused. Even from the floor, he looked authoritative, muscular shoulders, sharp profile, amber eyes that scanned Eleanor's face with a precision that felt almost human. "You slept a little," Logan said. "A little," Eleanor replied, her voice rough from a night without real rest. "Your cabin feels safe. That helps more than you know." Rex's ear twitched, acknowledging the compliment like he understood every word. Logan took a seat across from her. "If you're ready," he said gently, "you can tell me what happened long before last night." Eleanor inhaled slowly, her gaze drifting toward the window, where dew clung to the glass like tiny trembling stars. When she finally spoke, the words came cautiously, as if she were unwrapping something delicate. 20 years ago," she began, "there was another storm. Worse than last night, or maybe it just felt that way because of what I lost." Logan said nothing. People needed uninterrupted space when the truth cut this deep. "My husband, Caleb Ryder, was driving. He was tall, stubborn, and too hopeful for his own good." A faint, almost painful smile touched her lips. He believed every problem had an answer, every storm had an end. Logan recognized the tone, love softened by grief, still sharp around the edges. "And my son," she continued. "His name was Andrew. He was 10. Freckles, that impossible grin. He was the kind of child who made every room feel brighter." Her voice thinned. "They were my entire world." The cabin grew quieter than the woods. Outside, Eleanor clasped her hands tightly, nails pressing into her palms. "We were driving home from his piano practice when a truck lost control on a slick bend. Caleb swerved to avoid it. The car rolled. Twice, maybe 3 times. It's hard to know what's memory and what's my mind trying to fill the gaps." She paused to steady her breath. Even Rex lowered his head slightly, as though bracing himself for the impact of her words. "I survived because my seatbelt snapped," she said. "I was thrown clear, but the lower half of my spine, that didn't survive the landing." Logan watched her without pity, only respect for the strength it took to say these things aloud. "And Caleb? Andrew?" he asked softly. Eleanor shook her head once. "Gone before the car stopped moving." Silence settled across the room, not oppressive, but reverent. Lightning flashed faintly in the far distance, a leftover presence from the night before. The soft white glow through the window was all it took. Eleanor's breath stuttered, her shoulders tightened, and her fingers trembled against the blanket covering her lap. Rex moved before Logan did. The dog stood, stepped toward Eleanor with deliberate calm, and placed his front paws gently onto the edge of her footrest. His head lifted until his eyes met hers directly. There was no excitement, no anxiety, just a steady, grounding presence. Eleanor froze for a moment, startled by the intensity of his gaze. Then her expression shifted, softening in recognition she couldn't fully explain. "My son used to do that," she whispered, "when storms frightened me more than I wanted to admit." Logan leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Andrew would stand close," she murmured, her hand hovering unsurely before resting atop Rex's head. "He'd put his hand on mine to anchor me, not saying a word, just telling me I wasn't alone." Rex closed his eyes briefly, leaning into her touch. Eleanor swallowed hard, fighting a tremor. "How does he know? How can your dog sense something so specific?" "He's intuitive," Logan said. "He reads emotion like a second language. But this," he nodded toward Rex, "this is different from anything I've seen him do." Eleanor let out a shaky breath. "It feels like he sees right through me." Logan didn't contradict her. He didn't have any neat explanation for Rex's behavior. The dog had reacted to trauma before, but never with this kind of personal precision, never with recognition. Rex lowered himself to the floor beside her wheelchair, body angled toward her, tail still and relaxed, as though choosing to stand guard without being asked. Eleanor wiped at her cheek with a thumb, surprised to find tears there. "I thought I'd grown past this. That time had dulled the sharpest edges, but when the thunder hit last night, everything came back." "Trauma doesn't leave," Logan said quietly. "It just waits. You didn't fail by remembering. You survived." The statement wasn't meant to comfort, it was simply true. Eleanor felt the weight of its honesty and nodded slowly. Logan stood and added another log to the fire, the flames rising with a soft roar. The warmth spread into the room again, softening the morning chill. Eleanor watched the shape of Rex lying at her side, his breathing steady, his presence unwavering. "Your dog," she whispered, "is carrying something more than training." Logan looked at Rex thoughtfully. "Maybe he is." For a moment, none of them spoke. The cabin was still except for the low pop of burning wood and the quiet rhythm of Rex's breath. Eleanor drew in a slow, steady inhale. "Thank you, Logan, for listening, for this space, for not looking at me like I'm broken." "You're not," he said. "You're someone who lived through a storm most people wouldn't survive." Eleanor lowered her gaze, absorbing the words like warmth. Rex rested his head atop her footrest again. Eleanor let her fingers drift through his fur. And for the first time that morning, her breath eased into something even, something calm. Outside, the wind quieted. Inside, the storm inside her chest began to settle. This was the moment when their stories, three very different paths shaped by loss, quietly braided together. And none of them sensed yet that the night's rescue was only the first fracture in a much larger chain of events. The morning fog still clung to Rainhaven when Logan parked outside Northwood Grill, a two-story timber and brick restaurant wedged between a bakery and a hardware shop on Harbor Street. The place had a reputation for busy weekends, good shrimp chowder, and a staff turnover rate higher than the tide charts pinned in the marina office. Logan worked the kitchen because it paid steadily and because he preferred the quiet focus of preparing food over conversations he didn't want to have. Rex sat beside him in the truck bed enclosure, watching intently as people crossed the sidewalk. Logan rarely brought Rex to work, but after last night, he didn't want to leave the dog alone. Rex understood the tone of the morning, alert, calm, and ready for the unexpected. Logan checked his watch, 7 minutes late, not ideal. He stepped inside through the back employee entrance. The first wave of kitchen heat hit him, steam from boiling pots, the metallic hiss of stoves warming, the earthy smell of chopped herbs. The room buzzed with clatter and motion. Two prep cooks worked along the counter, a young woman named Jamie, short and quick-handed with a nervous energy, and an older line cook, Mark, tall with a weathered face like someone who'd smoked a pack a day since college. Jamie lifted her head when Logan walked in. "Rough morning, rough night," he corrected. Before Jamie could ask, a sharp voice cut through the kitchen. "Well, look who finally decided to join us." Brad Kellerman stood near the walk-in fridge, arms crossed tight across his chest. He looked almost too put together for a kitchen. Gray dress shirt pressed, hair gelled back so stiff it didn't move, a gold tie clip shaped like a miniature spatula. He was in his early 40s, slightly shorter than Logan, but heavier around the midsection. His face bore the kind of confidence that grows not from competence, but from believing no one will challenge you. Brad stepped forward, smirking in a way that made Jamie lower her eyes. 7 minutes late, Brad said. Rowan, is that your personal record, or did traffic get emotional again? Logan kept his voice neutral. There was an accident last night. I helped someone. Brad lifted both hands dramatically. Oh, everyone listen. Logan saved the world again. He laughed loudly, looking around for validation. A few cooks shifted awkwardly. Logan didn't rise to it. He reached for an apron. Brad wasn't done. You know, buddy, this is a kitchen, not a SEAL reunion. Nobody cares about your hero stories. A few customers seated near the service window glanced over at the outburst. Logan tied his apron calmly. I wasn't telling a story. Oh, forgive me then, Brad replied, voice thick with mock sympathy. We wouldn't want to distract from your tragic, rain-soaked commute. Mark, the older cook, muttered under his breath. Cut it out, Brad. Brad snapped. Stay in your lane, Mark. The kitchen went stiff again. Logan tried to shift the morning back to routine. He grabbed a towel, checked the prep station, and began arranging his workstation. His hands moved with practiced efficiency. Knife placement, pan angles, temperature checks, everything in its place. But Brad hovered behind him, pacing like someone searching for justification more than oversight. As Logan inspected a tray of prepped vegetables, a low rumble outside rolled through the building. Not thunder, just the wind shaking a loose gutter. But the vibration carried enough resonance that Rex, waiting outside with Tom the security guard, let out a sudden, sharp howl. The sound wasn't common. Logan knew it instantly. A warning. Brad scoffed loudly. Great. Now, even your dog is dramatic. Logan ignored him, but that howl sat in the back of his mind like a cold weight. Rex had only made that sound twice in the last 2 years, both times hours before something went terribly wrong. The next hour passed in a hard rhythm. Orders began to flow in. Logan cooked with calm precision, but Brad seemed determined to find fault in everything. Too slow, Rowan. Edges are too dark. Your station is sloppy. I've seen rookies with more focus. It wasn't that Brad needed things done a certain way. He wanted control, wanted someone to bend so he could feel taller. By late morning, Logan plated a tray of roasted vegetables for a lunch order. The edges had a mild char, intentional, adding texture and flavor. Mark glanced over and nodded in approval. Brad, however, stormed toward the tray like a prosecutor discovering evidence. What is this? He demanded, lifting the tray high. Burnt again? Are you trying to sabotage us? Logan looked up from his station. They're not burnt. Brad barked a humorless laugh. Oh, my apologies. I wasn't aware the new trend was charcoal cuisine. He marched toward the small office off the kitchen. Moments later, Logan's name was called. Inside the cramped office sat Nolan Graves, the regional general manager, a tall man in his early 50s with iron-gray hair and a posture that radiated calm authority. His usual collected demeanor looked strained today. Nolan folded his hands. Logan, Brad has reported multiple safety issues from your station. Claims of near flare-ups, inconsistent food quality, disruptive behavior. Logan frowned. None of that happened. Brad leaned casually against a file cabinet, attempting to look wounded. I wish I didn't have to bring this up, Nolan, but this morning he was shaking, distracted, not stable. I can't run a kitchen like that. Nolan sighed, tired. Logan, do you have anything to say? Logan held Nolan's gaze. Sir, the only thing I did wrong today was arrive late. I explained why. He said something about saving someone, Brad huffed, but I can't verify any of that. Nolan pinched the bridge of his nose. Protocol gives managers authority when there's conflicting accounts. Unless I have proof otherwise. Logan sensed the decision before Nolan spoke it. I have to let you go, Nolan finished quietly. A rare silence flooded the room. Logan removed his apron, set it down neatly on the desk, and nodded once. Thank you for the opportunity. He didn't look at Brad when he left. There was no point. Outside, Tom Barker, security guard, mid-50s, thick build, kind-natured, stood with Rex at his side. Tom's round face tightened when he saw Logan's expression. They let you go, didn't they? Logan nodded. Tom exhaled heavily. I saw Brad pacing around all morning like a man hunting for trouble. I'm sorry, Logan. You didn't deserve this. Rex pressed his forehead against Logan's thigh, tail low but steady. a gesture of loyalty and silent reassurance. Logan ran a hand over the dog's fur. "Come on, boy, we're done here." As they walked away from Northwood Grill, a faint tremor of distant thunder crossed the sky, despite no storm in the forecast. Rex paused, ears perfectly straight, eyes locked on the building behind them. Something was coming, something neither of them yet understood. Evening crept over Rainhaven with a gray heaviness that settled into the streets like a second skin. The storm had long passed, but the air still smelled of wet asphalt and pine sap. As Logan walked along Cedar Crest Lane with Rex pacing steadily beside him, the neighborhood felt muted, rows of single-story homes half swallowed by mist, porch lights glowing like small lighthouses in the fog. Logan's thoughts had not left Northwood Grill. Being fired wasn't what bothered him. He'd lost jobs before. Life had never softened its edges for him. What gnawed at him was the calculated nature of it. Brad hadn't just been petty, he'd been prepared, almost waiting for the chance. Rex picked up on Logan's tension. He stayed closer than usual, tail low in concentration, nose lifting to test the air. His gait changed, more measured, more tactical. Logan noticed. "What is it?" he murmured. Rex didn't break stride, but his ears had sharpened their angle, tracking something the fog still concealed. They approached Logan's small rental home at the end of the street. A modest one-story with cedar siding, a small porch bench, and a yard outlined by old garden stones. Logan slowed the moment he saw a silhouette near his mailbox, a shape too rigid to be casual, too tense to belong. A man stood half-turned toward Logan's parked truck, one hand holding up a phone, the screen glowing cold blue against the fog. His jacket was thin, not suited for the chill, and his posture was hunched in the way of someone caught between guilt and urgency. Rex froze. His entire body stiffened, muscles bracing. Then he barked, short, sharp, the kind of bark that meant active threat. "Don't look away." The man jerked around. Brad Kellerman. Logan stopped several feet away, jaw tightening. Brad's face looked different now, pale, eyes moving too quickly, hair no longer tidy but flattened from sweat. The confidence he wore inside the restaurant was nowhere to be seen. "What are you doing here?" Logan demanded. Brad sucked in a breath, stepping backward like he'd been shoved. I needed to confirm something. Just checking your license plate." "In front of my house? At night?" Brad swallowed hard, voice cracking. It's for the report. Management needs documentation. You wouldn't understand." Rex lunged forward 2 steps before Logan caught the back of his harness. The dog's teeth were bared, not wildly, but with disciplined threat, the kind meant to warn an enemy they'd crossed a line. Brad stumbled farther into the fog. "Keep him away from me. He's unstable. You're unstable. That place is better off without you." "Then leave," Logan said, voice low and even. Brad took another shaky step backward. "I'll have proof. All the proof I need." As he turned to run, something slipped from his jacket, a small black USB drive that clattered onto the wet grass. Brad didn't notice. He sprinted down the sidewalk, vanishing between the fog and the halo of a distant street lamp. Rex continued to growl until Brad's shape dissolved completely. Logan exhaled slowly and crouched to pick up the USB. It was cold, scratched along the edges, with a faded label stuck to one side. NG Storage 7, Northwood Grill Storage. "What were you planning, Brad?" Logan whispered. Rex sniffed the device once, then looked up at Logan with a low whine. Concern, not fear. Inside the house, Logan closed the door behind them and switched on the small lamp near the kitchen table. Warm light filled the room, contrasting sharply with the cold unease settling between his ribs. Rex sat near his chair, posture upright, eyes tracking every movement. Logan plugged the USB into his old laptop. It took a moment, the machine humming like it was waking from sleep. A folder appeared. Kitchen Accident Archives. He opened it. Inside were multiple video files, each labeled by date. Logan clicked the most recent. The footage showed the kitchen 2 weeks earlier. Logan at the stove, Brad walking behind him. Everything looked normal until the video glitched. The frames jumped. Suddenly Logan's hand appeared inches from an open flame, sparks flying upward. That never happened. He clicked another. A tray in the oven ignited without reason. Another clip showed a grease fire that Logan knew had never existed. All of it spliced from different angles, different days, stitched together to form a lie. Someone had engineered an entire narrative to make him look dangerous. Rex stepped closer to the laptop, ears flattening slightly. When one of the edited sparks crackled in the audio, Rex let out a low, eerie whine. Logan frowned. "What is it?" Rex didn't look at Logan. He stared at the screen, eyes sharp but unsettled, like he recognized something embedded within the sound. Logan replayed the clip, raising the volume slightly. This time he heard it, a faint, distorted tone beneath the noise, too subtle for most humans. But Logan had heard similar frequencies before, tones used in military conditioning, psychological training modules, and in special canine deployment signals meant to induce stress responses during simulations. Brad couldn't have known what that sound meant, which meant someone else was involved. Logan leaned back, breath steady but cold. The pieces arranged themselves with uncomfortable clarity, Brad following him, manufacturing proof, now collecting evidence at his home. "This isn't about a job," Logan murmured. "He's trying to bury me." Rex nudged his knee gently, a gesture both grounding and urgent. Logan closed the laptop, gripping the USB tightly. The room felt smaller, as if the walls had shifted inward. Whatever Brad was doing wasn't clumsy or desperate. It was planned, detailed, and it was escalating. Rex inhaled deeply, then let out a soft growl toward the front window. Something outside, maybe the lingering fog, maybe a presence they couldn't yet see, pressed against the edge of his instincts. "Yeah," Logan whispered. "I feel it too." He stood slowly, the weight of the night settling over him. "This is war." Rex met his eyes, amber pupils steady and unwavering, ready for whatever came next. Cold Ridge Mall was waking up, as the morning sun filtered through its high glass ceiling, spilling pale gold across polished tiles and storefronts still warming their lights. Shoppers drifted past with coffee cups in hand, their reflections trailing behind them like faint ghosts. The air carried the soft mingled scents of cinnamon, detergent, and roasted beans from the cafe near the escalator, but all of it seemed to quiet the moment Eleanor Ryder crossed the east entrance. She moved through the mall in her wheelchair with practiced precision, guiding the motorized chair by a small joystick near her right hand. Eleanor wore a long red coat, the same coat from the night of the storm, pressed, clean, dignified. The bold color contrasted with her silver hair, cut in a neat bob that framed her sharp cheekbones and elegant jawline. Her eyes, hazel with a ring of green, scanned the room with the calm focus of someone who had regained her breath overnight and now carried purpose like a compass. Her posture was poised, her expression was steady, but beneath it all was something far colder, resolve. In her lap sat a basket wrapped in a linen cloth. Fresh pastries from a small bakery she claimed carried the only croissants worth eating in Rainhaven. Today the basket was not a gift, it was an anchor, something to rest her hands on as her mind sharpened around what she was about to do. Security guard Tom Barker spotted her first. Tom was a broad-shouldered man in his mid-50s with a gentle face, thinning sandy hair, and eyes that always seemed halfway to a smile. He stood beside his booth near the entrance of Northwood Grill, with Rex sitting obediently at his side. Rex perked up immediately when he saw Eleanor, tail sweeping once across the tile. Tom blinked in surprise. "Morning, ma'am. Didn't expect to see you here." Eleanor offered him a polite nod. "I'm looking for Logan Hale." Tom's expression tightened. "Ma'am, Logan got fired yesterday, just a few hours after he left your place." Eleanor went still, a sharp stillness, the kind that feels like a room losing its air. "Fired?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "For what reason?" Tom shook his head. "Some nonsense about kitchen issues. No one here believes it. Brad's been itching for a reason to push Logan out." Eleanor's fingers tightened around the edge of the basket. Her jaw flexed once. "Where is this Brad now?" "Inside, I reckon," Tom said gently, though he seemed to sense the shift in her. "Ma'am, if you want, I can find Nolan, the regional manager. He's fair, But Eleanor didn't wait. She pressed the joystick forward and rolled toward the glass doors of Northwood Grill. Rex made a low sound in his throat, a soft, instinctive warning, not of danger, of a storm forming. Eleanor pushed inside. The lunch rush had already begun. Servers wove between tables, cooks shouted orders, plates clattered, and steam rose from the kitchen. Vents in quick bursts. Through it all, Brad Kellerman's voice cut sharply. "I told you table 7 gets drinks first. Do I have to repeat myself every 10 minutes? The young server he was speaking to looked close to tears. Brad didn't seem to notice, or care. Then he heard the distinct, clean click of heels. He turned, and the bravado drained from his expression. Eleanor approached the counter like a flame moving through dry grass. Slow, controlled, impossible to ignore. She set her basket gently on the smooth counter and folded her hands atop it. "I'm looking for the manager," she said. Brad adjusted his collar. "That would be me. Brad Kellerman, floor manager. How can I help?" "I'm here about Logan Hale." A ripple moved through the staff. Several servers stopped mid-step. Even a customer glanced over his shoulder. Brad's smile twitched. "Oh, you must be one of his friends. If you're here to dispute his termination, I'm afraid corporate policy is quite clear." A whisper from the register broke the air. "Oh my God, that's Eleanor Ryder." Another server whispered back, "From the Ryder Foundation, the one that funds the disability centers." Brad stiffened. You're that Mrs. Ryder?" Eleanor didn't blink. "Logan Hale saved my life, and your reaction was to strip him of his livelihood." Brad's face flushed a mottled red. "Mrs. Ryder, I assure you, his conduct was unacceptable. There were multiple safety issues." Her voice cut clean through his. "Tomorrow morning, I expect a meeting with senior management, all of them, present, prepared, and honest." Brad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Eleanor left without looking back. Outside, Logan stood on the sidewalk, talking quietly to Tom. He carried the tired heaviness of a man who'd been wronged, but refused to let bitterness take root. When he saw Eleanor rolling toward him, he straightened in confusion. "Eleanor," he said, "why are you here?" She stopped before him, the red coat bright against the muted gray of the mall exterior. "You saved me," she said softly. "I won't stand by while someone tries to destroy you." She lifted the basket toward him. "I came to thank you. Instead, I found injustice." Logan opened his mouth to protest, but Eleanor shook her head sharply. "No, tomorrow we fix this." Rex stepped between them, head turning back toward the restaurant entrance, a low, controlled growl rumbling in his chest. He did not growl at Eleanor. He growled at whatever he sensed behind her. Eleanor placed a calming hand on his head. "You see clearly," she whispered. The meeting the next morning felt nothing like a restaurant discussion. It felt like a tribunal. The Northwood Corporate Center conference room was polished, wide, and cold in a way only corporate spaces could be. A long oak table dominated the space. 12 chairs, a projector humming on the ceiling, blinds half drawn against the morning sun. Nolan Graves, the regional manager, looked grim as he organized documents on the table. Today he wore a charcoal suit and a look of suppressed frustration, not at Logan, but at the circus he'd been forced into. Tom Barker entered next with Rex at his side. The dog moved with deliberate calm, scanning the room with the silent thoroughness of a veteran. Logan followed, clean shirt, straight posture, no anger, just clarity. Then, finally, Eleanor arrived. Her wheelchair glided across the polished floor, red coat sweeping behind her like a trailing banner. Every executive in the room stood instinctively. Even those who didn't recognize her. The air shifted, respect, curiosity, maybe even fear. Brad entered last, and he looked like he hadn't slept. His hair was unkempt, his shirt wrinkled, sweat pinched at the edges of his collar. Nolan began. "We are here to address serious accusations regarding fabricated safety incidents and questionable dismissal procedures." Eleanor folded her hands. "Before we proceed, I'd like the USB Mr. Hale recovered last night to be displayed." Nolan nodded to the technician, a nervous man in his late 20s with sandy hair and thick glasses. He inserted the USB. The lights dimmed. Video footage filled the screen. Logan at the stove. A sudden burst of sparks. Edited. A grease flare fabricated. Another clip. Jagged, stitched, false. Eleanor watched with a gaze sharp enough to cut steel. Nolan's jaw tightened. "Brad," he said quietly, "do you deny creating these files?" Brad's voice trembled. It's not what it looks like. I was documenting potential hazards. He was unstable. I was protecting the restaurant." "Enough," Nolan snapped. While the video glitched into another false flare-up, Rex rose slowly from under the table. He stepped forward, placed one paw directly on Logan's boot, and stared at the false flames on the screen. It wasn't a warning this time. It was testimony. The room felt it. Even the executives froze. Tom cleared his throat. "I've worked a security here 5 years. Logan was never late until the night he saved her." He nodded toward Eleanor. "He came to my booth drenched, exhausted, still apologized. He's the most honorable man here. Silence. Nolan finally stood. His decision was immediate. Brad Kellerman, he said, effective immediately, you are suspended pending investigation. Your access is revoked. Security will escort you out. Brad staggered backward, his voice cracking into disbelief. You don't understand. This is all... But no one listened. Eleanor turned to Logan, her expression softening. You deserve better than this, she said gently. And soon, you will have it. Rex leaned against Logan's leg, calm again, as if the truth had restored the balance he always trusted. The meeting ended. The lies had broken. But the future that waited on the other side was something none of them could yet see. Soft spring sunlight drifted through the pines surrounding Logan's cabin, casting long stripes of gold across the porch and the gravel path leading to the small wooden ramp he'd finished the night before. The storm season had faded, leaving behind damp soil, budding ferns, and the quiet trickle of runoff weaving through the forest floor. Everything felt calmer, as if Rainhaven itself were exhaling after a long, tense winter. Inside the cabin, Eleanor Ryder lay propped against the armrest of Logan's sofa, a knitted blanket pulled over her lap. Her complexion was still pale, but the tremble in her hands was not as frequent as it had been that first night. She looked tired, deeply tired, but steadier, like someone trying to stitch her strength back together one breath at a time. On the floor beside her, Rex lay curled with his head resting near her footrest, eyes half closed but fully attentive. He had not left her side since the meeting at the corporate center. If Eleanor shifted, Rex lifted his head. If she sighed, he pressed his nose gently against her arm. The connection between them had grown without effort, quiet, instinctive, and profound. Logan stepped out of the kitchen with a tray of oatmeal, tea, and sliced fruit. He set it carefully on the small wooden table beside her. You're pushing too hard, he said. You should have stayed in bed another hour. Eleanor smiled weakly. I've been in bed enough for one lifetime. Logan raised a brow. Doctors might disagree. She let out a tired breath. Doctors disagree with everyone. He didn't argue. He simply lifted the blanket to check the small portable heater near her legs, making sure the warmth wasn't too strong. His movements were precise, practical, shaped by years of tending to wounded teammates. But Eleanor never felt like a patient around him. He had a way of helping that kept her dignity intact. A soft knock sounded at the door. Logan opened it to find Nolan Graves, tall, formal, even in casual clothing, with a folder tucked under his arm. The deep lines of his face were softened today by relief rather than strain. Morning, Logan, Nolan said. Then, seeing Eleanor, his tone shifted respectfully. Mrs. Ryder. Mr. Graves, she replied, giving a small nod. Nolan stepped inside, clearing his throat. I won't stay long. I only came to deliver this. He handed Logan the folder. Inside was a reinstatement contract, a written apology from the regional board, and an offer for a leadership role overseeing multiple branches. I don't need an apology, Logan said. Nolan shook his head. Whether you need it or not, it's owed to you. And you're the best man I've seen in that kitchen in 10 years. We want you back. Eleanor's eyes warmed. You should take it, Logan. Logan glanced at her, really looked at her. She seemed smaller today, as if exhaustion had carved deeper into her shoulders. Her breathing was slightly shallow, her focus occasionally drifting. Not dangerously weak, but clearly worn. I'll think about it, Logan said. Nolan nodded. Take your time, and thank you for how you handled everything. He left with a hint of renewed respect in his gait. Logan closed the door quietly and turned back to Eleanor. She was watching him with an expression he hadn't seen before, gentle, almost maternal. You didn't tell him the real reason you won't rush back, she said. Logan shrugged, pulling a chair beside her. Kitchen can wait. You're staying because of me, she said softly. He didn't deny it. Eleanor's eyes shimmered, not from sadness, but from something deeper, gratitude mixed with disbelief. Logan, you've done more for me in a week than anyone has done in 20 years, she whispered. Sometimes I forgot what it felt like to be cared for, truly cared for. Rex stood, walked to her side, and lifted his head onto her lap. Eleanor stroked his fur gently. And you, my silent guardian. Logan smiled faintly. He likes you. No, Eleanor corrected with a quiet, trembling exhale. He recognizes me. Logan paused. You said your son used to comfort you the same way. Yes. Her voice softened to a hush. Andrew used to stand just like Rex does. It's strange how grief leaves footprints in the smallest places. She looked around the cabin, the wood grain of the walls, the small table, the warm glow from the lamp beside the fireplace. You've made a safe place here, she said. I didn't realize how much I needed it. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, Logan replied. Eleanor swallowed, emotion flickering behind her eyes. I won't be a burden. You're not. A quiet fell between them, not heavy or tense, but peaceful, natural. Rex shifted, pressing closer to her. Logan noticed Eleanor's breathing grow faintly uneven. You okay? He asked. She nodded, though it was clear the effort of the last few days had taken more from her than she let on. Just tired. A different kind of tired. You should rest. I will, she whispered. But before I do, there's something I need to prepare, something important. Logan watched her carefully. What is it? Not yet, she said. Soon. Her gaze drifted to Rex again, the dog watching her like a heartbeat with fur. You two were brought into my life for a reason, she murmured. I just need to put the pieces in the right place before time slips ahead of me. Logan's brow tightened with concern. Eleanor, what do you mean? But she closed her eyes, too weary to answer. Tomorrow, she whispered. I'll tell you tomorrow. Rex settled at her side, protective, sensing something shifting deep inside her. Logan sat quietly beside them, the afternoon sun fading into soft amber across the floorboards. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he understood something with absolute clarity. The storm may have passed, but the story that brought them together was far from over. The morning Eleanor chose to rest forever arrived quietly, almost politely, as if Rainhaven understood it needed to soften itself for her sake. A thin veil of fog settled over the pines, turning their silhouettes into gentle brushstrokes against a pale sky. Dew clung to the porch rails. Birds kept their distance, chirping only when the sun finally pierced through the mist. Logan woke before dawn, as he always did, but something felt different the moment his eyes opened. The air in the cabin didn't feel empty. It felt still, purposeful, as if holding its breath. Rex sensed it too. He rose from his spot at the foot of the bed, ears pricked, head turning toward the living room. He made a soft, uncertain whine. Logan's chest tightened. Yeah, he murmured, voice rough. I feel it. He walked quietly through the cabin. Light from the fireplace, now only glowing embers, cast a small halo of warmth across Eleanor's blanket. She lay curled gently against the armrest, hands folded in her lap as if she had drifted into sleep mid-thought. Her expression was calm, peaceful, free from the weight that had followed her for decades. But the rise and fall of breath was no longer there. Logan knelt beside her, touching her hand. It was cool, but not cold, as if she had only recently let go. Rex approached slowly, resting his head on the blanket near her legs. His eyes didn't widen or panic. He simply stayed there, breathing softly, honoring her in the only way he knew. Logan bowed his head. There were no words to break the silence, and none were needed. The letter came 2 days later, delivered by a representative from the Ryder Foundation. A woman named Melissa Turner, mid-40s, tall and composed, with a calm professionalism softened by genuine kindness. She carried a briefcase and a sealed envelope marked with Eleanor's handwriting. Melissa spoke quietly. She prepared this months ago. She updated it after meeting you. Logan took the envelope, feeling the familiar tremble of shock and grief pulling at his ribs. May I read it here? He asked. Of course. He opened the envelope. Eleanor's handwriting, graceful and steady, flowed across the page. Logan, if you're reading this, it means the time I always knew would come has finally arrived. Not with fear, but with gratitude. Gratitude that the last chapter of my life was written beside you and Rex, two souls who reminded me what safety feels like. I have watched storms take. This time, a storm gave. I have no living family left, and no legacy more important than the one I see in you. So, I leave you everything I have built. The Ryder Foundation, my personal estate, and the land trust tied to the city. Use it however your heart decides. Just use it for good. Give others what you gave me. Dignity, hope, a reason to keep going. You were the son my heart remembered. Rex was the guardian my memory recognized. Take care of each other. And please, Logan, live boldly with the second chance you earned. Eleanor Ryder. Logan read the letter twice. Not a single line tore him apart, yet each one settled deeper than the last. Rex nudged his knee, firm, grounding, as if urging him to breathe again. Melissa stepped forward gently. She trusted you more than anyone. Everything is legally yours to steward. Logan nodded slowly, unable to speak. Months passed like chapters turning with careful hands. Rainhaven began to know his name, not the ex-SEAL who cooked at Northwood Grill, but the man rebuilding something meaningful on the land Eleanor left behind. The Eleanor Ryder Center for Recovery and Independence opened its doors on a mild summer morning. Its tall cedar beams and wide windows overlooked the forest, the interior filled with sunlight and warmth instead of cold linoleum. Physical therapists, counselors, and volunteers moved through its halls, helping people with mobility challenges rediscover confidence, community, and purpose. Logan supervised the training wing, guiding pairs of dogs and handlers, teaching veterans how to trust again, showing families how service animals could heal wounds no bandage could reach. Rex became the program's symbol, strong, loyal, intuitive, a reminder that survival could turn into service. Across town, Logan opened another project in Eleanor's honor, Safe Harbor Grill, a bright, welcoming restaurant staffed largely by veterans and individuals rebuilding their lives. Every plate held a story, every shift held a second chance. Nolan visited often. Even Tom took a part-time role greeting guests at the door. Logan didn't advertise the funding source. He didn't need to. People could feel Eleanor's hand in everything, warm, steady, guiding. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the pines and washed the sky in gold, Logan stood outside the center beside the carved wooden sign bearing Eleanor's name. Rex sat beside him, tail sweeping once, twice, in quiet contentment. Logan placed a hand on the sign, feeling the smooth grain beneath his palm. "You did more than leave a legacy," he said softly. "You left a direction." Rex nudged him, leaning his full weight against Logan's leg. Logan looked down. "Ready for another long day tomorrow?" Rex answered with a soft bark, low and warm, the kind that meant he was exactly where he was meant to be. The breeze moved through the trees, gentle and unhurried, as if carrying Eleanor's approval through the branches. Logan straightened, breath steady, shoulders firm. The storm that once threatened to break them had instead bound them together. And from that night forward, everything became possible. The future wasn't dark. It was only just beginning. There are storms in life that feel as if they will wash away everything we have left inside us. Yet it is often through those very storms that God sends us something quiet, unexpected, something shaped like a stranger, a loyal dog, or a moment placed so perfectly that it could only be guided by His hand. Logan never went looking for a miracle that night. Eleanor wasn't hoping for anything more than survival. But God placed them on the same road, in the same storm, and let Rex become the bridge between two wounded souls who needed healing. From the pain of the past, a new kind of family was born. From one act of compassion, a whole community found hope again. And from Eleanor's sorrow, a legacy emerged, one that now lifts others out of darkness. That isn't coincidence. It is design. It is God's quiet work in the hidden places of our lives. In our everyday routines, we may not always see what He is doing, but He is there, in the kindness we show, in the people we meet by chance, and in the miracles that only become clear when we look back. So, if you're walking through a storm right now, hold on. God is still writing your story. And what He brings next may be more beautiful than anything you've lost. May God bless you, your health, your family, and your journey forward. May His peace rest gently on your shoulders.